The first video ended with this back piece. I was going to attach these into this big piece, and I've done it now. These are attached here in the top edge, and then these here in the sides, and I did an extra step here. Let's see, I'll show closer here. I stitched here where this band goes inside this fabric piece, because I wanted to secure the attachment. So now that this is stitched to the fabric, any stresses on this strap, they will divide evenly on this part of the side seam. So it's better than just having the narrow strap in the side seam. This will help keep the side seam from ripping. It could do that if there's too much weight in the backpack. So that should work. And then I didn't mention what I was going to do with these ends. And the idea is that these straps will be fixed length, but sort of semi-permanent. And that means I'm going to just fold this, measure the right length, what I think is the right length, fold this, and then stitch it here. And then I'm leaving the extra. I'm not cutting it off, because if it turns out that the strap is not long enough, then I can just remove the stitches and just lengthen it a bit and then stitch it again. And this length it's more than enough. I mean, it's probably going to be about this much, the actual length it should be, but this is just to make sure, because it wouldn't be fun to realize at this point that it's too short. So it's always best to make it a bit too long, because it's easier to cut away than add length. So the next step, I now have the front and back finished. Well, this is going to be the very last step. Once I have this backpack finished, then I'm going to just first measure what I think will be the right length, and then pin it here and try it on to see that if that really is the right length. But the next step is attaching this side, and that's really easy. It just means turning it wrong side out, and then I'm going to measure halfway this edge here. That was the upper edge of this is also halfway there, but this seam here joining the upper and lower parts, this is that, it's also halfway, so halfway here, and this seam, and aligning it here, and the same on the other side, and then just pinning this along the edges so that it goes evenly and everything is in its correct place. And then once it's pinned in place, then I'm going to sew around. And there's one thing about that. I'm going to sew this so that I'm starting here, going here over these, then in this place I'll go over, back, and then over, so 3 times across this, just to make sure it's securely attached. And then here, same thing here, forward, backward, forward, and then here at the top I'm going to go over these the second time and then return. That's the third time. So that should ensure that the seams won't rip here where there's the pressure, because the weight of the backpack is going to be on these places. So the seam needs to be extra strong here, and going back and forth is going to ensure that. And I think after that I'll probably stitch the seam allowances again, because it'll be easier when that front piece isn't in place. And then it's time for the front piece. First I'm going to sew these two pieces together. Okay, the sides are now in place, but there was a minor problem. Like if this part is a bit longer than the edges of this back part, this is what happens. When I got to this corner, there was too much fabric on this side left. I couldn't get it evenly along this edge, so I just where is it? I just folded it neatly here, so I got the extra fabric there, and it shows on the outside. There is this small here, but I don't mind, because I'm doing this for myself. I'm making this for myself, and I can live with that. If I was making this for somebody else, I would just remove the stitches all around and fix the problem, but I'm not going to do that in this case. And then the next part is stitching these seam allowances, and I'm doing it now because I at least get the stitch this side easily. It's gonna be a bit trickier when the front is in place, but now it's going to be easy. But there's one thing to consider, and it's these straps, the ends. The plan is that they go this way, so the lining, when it's in place, then I'm going to stitch here just to reinforce the attachments even more. But that means that I need to clip the seam allowances here and here, so I can put this part of them down, but the rest of the seam allowances will go to this side, because the stitches are supposed to be here. So I'll be folding all the seam allowances like this, and then stitching from this side here along the edge. And when I get to this part, I'm just going to, even though the seam allowances aren't under here, I'm going to stitch this, because it would look odd if the stitching is not there. So stitching all around, but this part of the seam allowances will go down. The back is now in place, and the next part is sewing the front in place. And the first thing to do is to make sure the zipper is open, because, well, this kind of zipper is, you can open it from the wrong side. Yeah, it opens easily, but if you have a metal zipper, you must remember to open it before this next step, because metal zippers I don't think you could open it from the wrong side. They're sometimes difficult to open even in the way they're supposed to be opened, so it could be a problem if you forget this. But this goes in place the same way as the back. You just, except here I can find the middle point easily because it's here. So aligning it here and aligning it here and then pinning this in place so that it goes around evenly. And one thing I forgot to mention with the back is that when you sew this side in place, you need to sew it from this side. If you try to do it from this side, the corners are going to be a problem. So just let's straighten it. You pin this in place and then you sew it from this side, and you need to be careful with the corners. I'm not sure how difficult this is going to be, but it could be. Yeah, just need to take it nice and slow. Don't try to go too fast. Just carefully and avoiding this folding this fabric in any way. It should be nice and flat where the seam goes. And that could be difficult. The straight parts will be easy, but the corners you need to be very careful with those. But that's the next step, and then after that I'm going to stitch it the same way as this one, but it is going to be a bit trickier. Okay, the front piece is now in place, and the next step is stitching all the way around. And the way to do is you have this wrong side out and then just decide where you want to start. I'm going to start here because it's easy to get this under the presser foot where there's just this much. So take under it, and then need to check that the seam allowances are on the side they're supposed to be. There. Then here. And then it's just starting here, checking that the seam allowances are on this side, and going all the way around until I come back to this place. And the bottom is going to require a bit of adjusting these fabrics because you're going to have a lot of this here around and just a little free space around the presser foot, but you can do it when you do it a little bit at a time. Just straighten all the fabrics, check that the seam allowances are on this side, and then just go forward bit by bit until you reach the point where you started. The outside of the backpack is now ready, and the next step is to make the lining. I have already started. Here, let's see. First, this is the back piece. I have stitched these layers into it, and this is the front of the lining, and then the sides are here. This is the top part and this is the bottom, and I had enough of this felt to put one piece here at the bottom, because it'll make the backpack keep its shape better when there's this piece at the bottom. So now these parts go under the part where the zipper is. So these inside, the middle edges need to be turned here, folded and sewn, and then they are sewn into this part like this, and there needs to be a gap in the middle. This should be as wide as the zipper, because this is where the zipper will go. So I need to sew these, and then here, and then I'll just combine all three pieces the same way as in the outer part. And I'm thinking of adding a pocket inside, so I think I'll sew this first and the front, and then I'll need to make the pocket, because the pocket I'm going to attach it here in this seam here at the top. It's going to be a simple zipper pocket, and it needs to be attached when this side is sewn to this back. So I have pinned the back and side together, and now I have a problem. The felt, it's so much thicker than this just two fabric layers here. So as you can see, the presser foot, that's probably not going to be easy to sew this straight. That's gonna keep slipping from that edge of the felt piece, and also the stitches are not supposed to go to that felt, so guiding this edge so that the needle doesn't go into the felt would be difficult. So I'll need to do something else, and I think I maybe have a solution for this. This is the zipper foot, and it'll go there. If I use this, it won't rise on top of that felt piece, because it's the machine is pressing it down, and the felt, it's quite high there, so it shouldn't. The only problem is that are there going to be enough seam allowances, as the needle is there. It's going to go about, let's say, 3-4 millimeters from the edge of this felt. So to fix that, let's see, this is a Passport 3.0. Here's the manufacturer. So this is what you do with this machine. Here you can adjust the needle position. So I'll show you what this does. Just look at the needle. Okay, that's 0, and that yellow light, I suppose that tells that the position has been changed. So now it looks like the needle is going to go right at the edge of that felt piece. So this should work. try and see what happens, but I think this should be the solution for the problem. Okay, that worked. The stitches are at an even distance from the edge all around, well, except here in the corners. These were a bit tricky to sew, but they are good enough. And here is the inside pocket I made. It's now there in that top seam. And although this works, the better solution would be to wait and not stitch this felt part in the back when I did it. Just wait until this stage and sew this side piece in place first, and now when that's in place, then stitch the felt into this back piece. That would be easier, and it would also give you the chance to adjust the size of the felt piece if needed. But it can be done this way as well if you use the zipper foot and adjust the needle. And in case you're wondering about this, this is a minor cooking accident. I've already given up chopping onions, but it's starting to look like I need to give up the large cook knife altogether. My fingers have been suffering too often. I shouldn't be using it at all. Okay, I have sewn the lining, all pieces together, and I put it inside this outer part. And then the last thing to be stitched is this, the edges of the opening in the lining to the edges of the opening in the upper part, so that the zipper is here. This edge shouldn't go too close to the zipper edge. And once you've pinned it, then just need to stitch all around to attach the lining to the upper part. And of course I had then these straps. Need to stitch here and then stitch these ends together, but this is the one major part that's left, and then just the straps, and then this is finished. Okay, it's all finished. Now these are stitched together, so the lining is sewn in place, and then here the ends of the straps are stitched through, so they'll stay there neatly and securely. And what else? Yes, these are stitched, and I just tried this on, and the length is, well, at least for now it seems correct, but it really depends on when I put everything I need to carry in here, and then I'll see how low it goes on my back. If it's too low, it's not good for your back, so I might have to shorten these a bit. But for now it seems that everything's fine. So there are pockets, and one pocket here and one here, and then a There's one zipper pocket inside, totally just attached here at the top edge. And the lining maybe isn't quite the style for this fabric, but it's what I had available. Anyway, the lining doesn't show on the outside, so once this is closed, it looks quite fancy, and doesn't matter that there's a fabric with cute cats and dogs inside. So I'm fairly pleased with the result. There are some things I would do differently, like the felt here in the back, and then I'm thinking about whether the back part, whether all these layers should be stitched together to keep the lining in place and the felt piece in place where it should be, although the lining will stay in place properly when there's stuff in here. It just seems to, when this is empty, it's hard to get it to stay in there the way it's supposed to. But once this is in use, everything should be fine. And this is the first version. I've never made a backpack before, so this is good for first try. And now if I want to make another one, I know what I want to do differently. But this is going to replace the old one for now, and we'll see later if I want to make something different.